And welcome to the March 20th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. The Board of, I would like to call this regular business meeting to order. Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Here.
Ms. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Schwartz?
Here.
Ms. Upchurch?
Here. The Board of Education maintains a webpage on lewispalmer.org through which members of our public can find our live streaming information, meeting records, as well as presentations and resources which we will review and discuss during this meeting. I'd like to invite two of our students to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Our first item among a number of recognitions is that March is Music in Our Schools Month. Musical arts are vital to the well-being of students at every level, providing a positive impact on academic, personal, and professional growth. Lewis Palmer School District 38 music instructors work diligently to ensure a comprehensive program from kindergarten through graduation. In recognition of the outstanding music programs offered to D38 students, the Board of Education will be reading a proclamation honoring music education. Is Ms. Eversole coming up first? I'd like to invite Ms. Eversole up now. She is the Lewis Palmer Elementary School music teacher, and she's going to speak briefly about D38 programming.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for having us here, and thank you for acknowledging the proclamation. Thank you to our Lewis Palmer School Board for recognizing the value of music in our Schools Month. I want to remind each of you that the Performing Arts calendar is shared with you on your Google Calendar. We have quite a few performances crammed in even between now and Friday for spring break, so please know you are welcome anytime. Music in Our Schools Month is a time set aside to specifically acknowledge the value that music brings to the students in our schools and district. Music was recognized by the Greeks, Plato, and Socrates. Socrates asserted that education as music is most sovereign because of its capacity to shape the soul, and he stated music is essential. First, because rhythm and harmony permeate the inner part of the soul more than anything else, affecting it most strongly and bringing it grace so that if somebody is properly educated in music, it makes them graceful, but if not, then the opposite. Second, he said, because anyone who has been properly educated in music will sense it actually when something has been omitted from a thing and when it hasn't been finely crafted or finely made by nature. And since he has the right, I think I have a typo. He'll praise fine things, but pleased by them, receiving them into his soul and being nurtured by them, become fine and good. In the 19th century, Horace Mann, the father of American public schools, believed the arts enhanced learning. It became part of the curriculum as a way for society to develop intellectually and to become empowered. Now, centuries after the Greeks and Horace Mann, we still maintain music as a vital part of our schools. Today, the Every Student Succeeds Act continues to define new and clear intent to support music as a core subject in schools and provide a well-rounded education. Music education should be part of every child's education, no matter their personal circumstance. Sorry, I have a little bit more. There is so much discussion out there about the impact of COVID, distance learning, absence from school on our children, both academically and socially. I share with you the board that Texas A&M University released a study this past January in regard to the benefits of the performing arts in our schools. Many of us have been bombarded with data regarding how music boosts grades, SAT scores, graduation rates, and college pathways. Those studies are all valid, and yet this study provided new data. The trial compared two groups of 21 elementary and middle schools together, each of them with one group with the arts and one group without the arts in the schools. Both were demographically similar. Here's what the two-year study found. Schools without the arts for the 2 years had 14.5% disciplinary infractions, while those with the arts had 10.9%. It's a difference of 3.6% benefit to the schools with the arts. In addition, researchers detected an increase in students' compassion for one another. I believe that we all know how important it is for our students to have a safe place to learn, create, and be themselves. A safe environment to make mistakes and celebrate their accomplishments. One music teacher from Ireland said, "Music isn't extra. Music isn't additional. It's not discretionary. Music isn't an add-on. And music isn't disposable. Music education is core, it's fundamental, it's necessary. It's an irreplaceable component of a holistic and meaningful education." That's what music is. So I trust that D38 will continue to provide the opportunity for all students. Today may be the time that we need music in our schools more than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eversole. With that, I think we will introduce our three instrumentalists. We have a musical performance, which may be the highlight of the evening, so I'm glad you're all here. So this, Ms. Jensen, would you like to introduce your group? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Jensen, and I teach over at Bear Creek Elementary. I teach band for 6th grade this year, and also K through 5 general music, and extracurricular choir. We love music at Bear Creek, and these three young ladies have undertaken a special over and above ensemble festival that they participated in. They met each other at school, they worked on their piece, they chose their piece, they rehearsed, they got a lot of benefit from learning how to start and stop and follow a tempo and do musical things while they were playing their notes. And they did all this a lot on their own. I had to help a bit, but not much. And all this learning that they gained from just playing in this little group has been amazing. So I'll let them introduce their piece.
Hello, everybody. We are the 6th grade brass trio from Bear Creek Elementary. I'm Izzy.
I'm Claire. I'm Hosanna. And today we will be playing Twinkling Forest by Silko Dai.
Thank you very, very much. I feel like you have just ushered in this proclamation, so I will now read the full resolution proclaiming the month of March as Music in Our Schools Month. Whereas for more than 30 years, March has been officially designated by the National Association for Music Education as Music in Our Schools Month, encouraging communities across the nation to focus on music education. And whereas music education is part of a well-rounded education for every student, as outlined in the Every Student Succeeds Act, and whereas the purpose of this celebration is to raise awareness of the lasting positive impact of music education on the academic, personal, and professional growth of our students, and whereas music education shapes the way our students understand themselves and the world around them, allowing for a deep engagement with learning, and whereas Music in Our Schools Month reminds us that school is where all children should have access to music, and whereas music educators, students, and communities throughout Monument demonstrate the importance of quality music education programs to the lives of our young people, and whereas the state of Colorado joins our music students, educators, and communities in celebrating the power of music education, now therefore be it resolved, Lewis Palmer School District 38 does hereby proclaim March 2023 as Music in Our Schools Month and encourages our citizens to celebrate and acknowledge every day, but especially in March, that music education is an essential part of every student's well-rounded education, adopted this 20th day of March 2023.
Do we need a second?
Do I make a motion for, oh yes,
Did you?
It's actually not something that needs a vote. You're just going to sign off on it, and we'll have a record of it.
Excellent.
but you're welcome to make a comment if you'd like with regard to the resolution. All right. Hearing none, we will go to the next recognition that we have, which Dr. Summers.
Excellent. So we are very proud to have a moment for some staff recognition, and I'd like to invite up Ms. Tiffany Brown, and I believe Mr. Rick Frampton as well. The two of them are going to do a very comprehensive introduction of one of our very special staff members.
Okay, everybody. My name's Rick Frampton. I'm the
Mi
Director
nombre
of
es el
Student
señor
Services,
Frampton y soy el
and
director
I'm
de
here
los
to
servicios de
introduce
estudiantes
and honor
especiales.
Margarita
Y
this
estoy
evening.
aquí para presentar a Margarita
And one of the
en
things
honor
I've
esta
asked her
noche.
to
Y
do
una de las
tonight
cosas de
is
cuales
to
yo le pedí
share
esta
with
noche
you
es a
a
compartir con
skill
ustedes
that I have never
una habilidad de
experienced in my
cual yo
entire
jamás
life,
he
which is
presentado en mi
simultaneous
vida, de
translation.
cuál es los servicios de interpretación simultáneo.
Isn't that incredible? Check
¿Eso
that
no es
out.
increíble?
We demonstrated that because one thing Margarita brings to Lewis Palmer School District is the ability to allow families who need translation in a meeting to access that meeting in ways that I've never seen before. She not only is able to speak in hear and speak. I can hardly even do one language as well as I see her navigate both languages. So her ability to help families access their education and the meetings and the opportunities for their children is second to none. I've never seen anything quite like that, and that's pretty impressive, right? So that's just one small example of the many skills that Margarita brings to Lewis Palmer School District, and we're so honored and thrilled to be able to have that kind of talent here. I'm going to hand this off to Ms. Brown, who's our Director of MTSS and Culturally Diverse Students, and we'll hand it off to her.
Sorry about that. So as Mr. Frampton mentioned, my name is Tiffany Brown.
Mi nombre es Sydney Brown.
I've asked one of our freelance interpreters, Angelica Paredes, to help so that we can make sure that everyone understands what we want to say about the wonderful Miss Margarita.
He invitado a Angélica para que nos interprete esta noche para decir lo maravillosa que es Miss Margarita.
Mr. Frampton was very clear in the wonderful demonstration of what a skilled interpreter Margarita is.
El señor fue muy claro en cómo es de intérprete para Margarita.
But what she also does well is all of our translation in Spanish for the district as well. And when she translates,
Otra cosa que hace muy bien es traducir para todos.
she works very, very diligently to make sure that the words that she selects are clear to families that are not in education.
Ella trabaja muy duro para interpretar y traducir para nuestras familias muy cuidadosamente.
So her goal in her work is to make sure that communication is always happening, whether written or oral.
Para ella su meta más grande es que ya sea oral o escrito, que sea muy bien interpretado.
The access she provides by being that communication link for our families
Que eso proviene a la comunicación para nuestras familias.
is second to none.
Es enseguida de nada.
However, it's really her role as our family liaison
Y primeramente es más bien el rol de la familia,
is where Margarita shines.
es donde ella más brilla, el amor a su familia.
What didn't come through in her demonstration of her amazing interpretation
Lo que más brilla es su interpretación, es muy admirable.
is the level of relationship she has with each and every one of her families.
El nivel que ella tiene con las familias, con cada una de las familias de ustedes.
She is family to our families,
Ella es familia de nuestras familias
and she is a pillar of our community in D38.
y es un pilar en el Distrito 38.
So we honor her today for the gift that she is to our students and our families and our teachers.
La honramos hoy por lo que es el regalo. Ella es un regalo para el Distrito 38 y para nuestras familias hispanas.
We have two parents here who wanted to share just a little bit of that gift that she's been able to provide for them through the relationship and care that she does with her work.
Tenemos dos familias aquí presentes que quisieran compartir lo importante o lo especial que es Margarita para lo que ha sido para ellos.
Señor Margarita,
Mrs. Margarita,
felicidades por este merecido reconocimiento.
congratulations on this well-deserved recognition.
Gracias por la confianza brindada a nuestras familias,
Thank you for the confidence given to our families,
por su paciencia,
for your patience,
por su constante apoyo,
your constant support,
por su esfuerzo y disciplina.
for your effort and discipline.
En el corazón de los niños hispanohablantes usted tiene un lugar muy especial.
You have a very special place in the heart of the Spanish-speaking children,
Y en especial en el corazón de mi familia.
especially in the heart of my family.
Felicidades nuevamente, Margarita.
Congratulations once again, Margarita.
Thank you for giving our kids much needed advice, for helping shape the future generations, for making many sacrifices, for taking up a profession so selfless, and especially for letting our parents breathe easy, knowing they can count on you to be there for them. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Congratulations, Margarita, you deserve it.
We could take one large group photo if the families that are here to support you want to come up. Everybody come up, and we'll take one large photo, please. Mr. Belcher, you can take photo control.
I'll give you a 1 in 3 chance of that happening.
You can do it.
Do we want to be in this too? Yeah. Okay.
Our board's going to join. One moment. Perfect spot, Tiffany. Perfect. All right. 3, 2, 1. Thank you guys so much.
At this time, in accordance with policy BEDH, the board will hear comments from members of the public who have signed up to speak. It is our goal as a board to continuously listen and improve, and we invite members of our community to speak publicly for a total of 30 minutes. Speakers are allotted up to 3 minutes each, and time is divided equally if more than 10 individuals wish to speak. Groups with a united concern may be asked to appoint a spokesperson. The Board of Education does not respond to public comment, and to this point, comments expressed do not represent the position or opinion of the Board of Education or D38. Finally, we ask that you please keep comments shared appropriate for our PK through 12 audience and respectful at all times. Should you have an issue with a staff member that you would like addressed, please consider sharing these criticisms and concerns with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff and involving the board as necessary. To that end, we have 2 people who signed up to comment. The first, as I understand, Ms. Wood, is Stephanie Markle. Ms. Markle?
Hello, thank you, board. I am Stephanie Markle. I teach at Palmer Ridge, and I'm also a parent of 2 students so far in the district. I am thankful that the district is working to keep their experienced teachers, as shown in the recent compensation plan, by honoring some of the previous years served and the anniversary payment, as I'll always choose money over a t-shirt. There is still a need to increase teacher pay in the region, though. Since the PPR went up for all of Colorado, D38 will remain the 6th lowest paying district in the region unless an MLO is passed. This impacts teachers in multiple ways. Not only is it difficult to make ends meet in most teachers' households, our planning periods are often interrupted to sub for other classes, as we offer lower pay than the surrounding districts for our subs as well. From February 1st through March 3rd, Palmer Ridge had 75 full sub-day requests in which 22 of them were not filled, and we had to cover internally. That's almost the entire month. We had at least one teacher out, 4 classes that needed to be covered internally. That does not include the 4 half-day sub-requests that also all needed to be covered internally. Not only does this impact teacher planning time and increases our exhaustion, it also impacts students, as teachers are giving the most basic plans for subs, knowing that one of their peers could be called upon to watch during their planning period. I was gone for a day. I had to do the most simple sub-plans because I was afraid that and it happened where one of my peers had to cover my classroom and I wanted to make sure that they had the time to plan for their classes as well. I remain hopeful that our district will continue to strive to improve upon each D38 member's pay, and I continue to ask you to look into having an MLO on the ballot this fall. Thank you.
Mr. Phil Chapman?
Hi, my name is Phil Chapman. I have been teaching math at Palmer Ridge for the last couple of months. My passion and God-given talent is to teach. I love teaching math. As I've contemplated leaving Palmer Ridge, a part of me feels that I would be abandoning my students and my colleagues. But the truth is, I and my colleagues and our students are being abandoned by the very community we serve. As a teacher with 12 years in education and over 20 years in business management, I make under $46,000 a year. The 7% raise provided by the state doesn't even cover inflation. If I work the exact same number of days as a server at Texas Roadhouse, where I work part-time, with average tips, I would make a little over $45,000, same number of days. So this community seems to believe that my value as a server at a steakhouse is basically the same as my value as their child's math teacher. It sounds ludicrous, but it's true. I have heard we already have the best schools. Why pay our teachers more? I have managed and owned businesses. If your most productive employee came to you for a wage that's more commensurate with the average wage around of the other competitors, would you have the nerve to say, "You're already extraordinary. Why should I pay you more?" Absurd, right? And yet we as educators have been given this insulting argument for decades. It is arrogant, outrageously disrespectful, and frankly, it's disgraceful. I'm an outstanding math teacher and role model. However, my wife injured her hip when we moved here. Working is painful. I cannot. And will not let her sacrifice her health further so I can teach here. So I have resigned my position at Palmer Ridge. I fear many more resignations will follow. I have shed many tears and witnessed others shedding the same tears. With that being said, my family comes first. If salaries do not improve significantly, and now, the exodus of qualified and morally based teachers from this district will be catastrophic. Instead of teachers who are passionate about teaching your children how to think for themselves, you will get either unqualified, lazy teachers, as you have had some lately, or you will get teachers with nefarious agendas that do not care about money. Their only agenda is to teach your children what to think and who to hate. They are numerous, militant, and vocal. You will be paying teachers. This community with competitive pay could get and retain the very best. But the window is closing fast. In fact, it might be too late. It is too late for me. This community can choose the status quo that we are seeing all over our country, or choose to make the greatest generation again. Please choose liberty, because that's really what is at stake here today. Thank you.
We're going to segue into board comments. And Mr. Clausen, if I could start with you this evening.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Phillips. I typically don't respond to comments made by the public, but considering what was addressed, as one board member, being on this board for nearly 8 years, we have tried and will continue to try what we could do to get our teachers in parity with the other districts. And I'm sorry that we've lost even one of our competent teachers, and we will continue to try. So please be patient with us. That's all I have. Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Mr. Schwartz?
Just real briefly, I hope to change it up a little bit. First of all, the recognitions today were fantastic. One thing that I wanted for us to keep in mind, there's so much negative activity going on in the news and in everybody's lives. It's nice to have something to cheer us up. I don't know if the rest of the folks in the room noticed, but when those 3 students were playing, there were smiles on every single face in the audience. And that even included the stoic board member, so congratulations. It's wonderful to know the real reason we're all here. and it keeps us grounded. So thanks to Ms. Eversole and your group and the peers for what you do and for keeping us grounded. And for Dr. Summers, as far as March being Music Appreciation Month, I just want to make sure you know it's not all about college basketball anymore.
Noted.
That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Upchurch?
I also wanted to say thank you for your candid, genuine, and real testimony and words. And I want to also thank all of our educators for all you put into our students. And I really, the music that we saw today and the recognition was a testament to that. I had originally intended to share kudos and updates from my visits within our various schools at our PTOs and our district and building accountability committees, of which there is much to honor and celebrate. And I had also planned to talk about Chamber of Commerce and legislative updates, some of which are going to affect D38. However, none of that seems as important to me personally as recognizing and standing in solidarity with our young women and our marginalized students, past, present, and in the future, that attend our schools and live in our communities. 1 in 5, according to the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, 1 in 5 women carry the burden of being assaulted. Now, nationwide, 81% of women and 43% of men reported experiencing some form of harassment, and 1 in 3 female victims are victims of completed or attempted rape for the first time between the age of 11 and 17. So I want you guys to look around this room at how many of us that affects. Nearly 3 out of 4 adolescents, which is about 74%, who have been sexually assaulted were victimized by someone they knew. And many of us carry the trauma of sexual violence, assault, harassment on our shoulders. And it makes me sick to my stomach that our society and our systems are still failing our women and our marginalized people. And according to the latest studies from the CDC, that statistic isn't shrinking, it's actually been growing since 2017. And as a woman who was also a victim as an adolescent, as a mother of a daughter who attended Palmer Ridge, and as a leader, I have many thoughts, questions, and emotions. The fact that our children have to carry that burden does not sit well with me. Students cannot learn in an atmosphere in which they do not feel safe, and it is imperative that our young people feel safe and welcome in our schools. Victims and survivors of sexual and relationship assault may experience alienation, barriers to academic success, health problems, persistent mental health issues, fear of retaliation, difficulty in the job market, feeling insecure, isolated, and guilt. And I appreciate that we have strengthened our policies and procedures and improved access to resources, despite the fact, I might add, that in 2020, the American Psychology Association wrote a paper, which I encourage you all to read, sharing that it is now actually more difficult to file claims of sexual assault under the new Education Department's Title IX rules back in 2020. So we as a society must step up, and we must be better. This month is International Women's Month. Next month is National Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We must have an active voice in new and ongoing initiatives and policies that protect our young people from predators. Often when we as a society talk about how to reduce sexual assault, women are taught about techniques and tactics of things we can do to avoid it. But you know what else? Consent. Consent is more than a yes or no. Consent must be taught, it must be learned, and it must be understood. And this community can role model that and teach that. And this community can also role model respect. Regardless of our differences, we as adults should not tell women to know your place or that you're replaceable. We should push against harassment, abuse, exploitation, and disrespect. And finally, to the courageous young ladies who are sharing your stories out there, you are beautiful. You are brave. It is not your fault, and you deserve justice and support. You did nothing wrong to deserve the trauma you're going through, and your voice, your willingness to share your stories for women, for us women everywhere, and your activism is braver than most of us have. So I stand with women in solidarity. Thank you.
We are all neighbors. We're all community members, parents, leaders, and we're human. So when we hear of a young person who's experienced any trauma, it strikes a painful chord. While we understand the frustrations, we cannot legally provide details about student discipline situations, and we must follow the law as it pertains to student privacy. We desire the utmost safety for all of our students at all times, and toward that end, we have confidence in our current leadership team. And we as a board continue to review and revise our governing policies. This work is ever and ongoing. My last comment is that we continue to meet with an empty board seat, which encompasses, for District 1, which encompasses Palmer Lake and part of the surrounding area. We are accepting applications through March 31st at noon and anticipate appointing a new member of the Board of Education after interviews are conducted on April 4th. And with that, I'll pass to the superintendent update. Dr. Summers.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the powerful and poignant messages and also the powerful recognition that occurred this evening. So as we've grown accustomed to, we'll dive into an update, and we'll start off with a grounding reference to our vision, our mission, our plan, and our values, which we're excited to set the stage for a little bit later this evening as we engage in some of our update regarding our Portrait of a Graduate and Portrait of an Educator work. Multiple celebrations and kudos, 2 pages worth, as you'll see on the screen in front of you. So I'm just going to name the names. I'm not going to read every statement verbatim, but this will be and continues to be an item in our monthly roundup and updates. So big celebrations and kudos to Stacy Baker, Devon Johnson, Adam Stewart, Josh Hill, Carrie Locke, Alicia Holden, Michelle Reeves, and Jackie Good. Andrea Griffin, Anu Kalbfleisch, Leslie Boyce, Carrie McLinn, Carrie Block, Valerie Clementi, Annette Palmer, Dr. Michael Brom, the entire CLD team, Jess McAllister, Arlene Maloney, Joan Morey, and Jim Taylor. So we have some grant winners, and pardon me, on the AFCEA award, I am not exactly sure what that acronym states, but Chris Lilly, our Lewis Palmer High School Theater and English teacher, Kelly Parks, Lewis Palmer Elementary Library and Technology, and Neva Nardone, Lewis Palmer Elementary School Science and Social Studies. So this was a Rocky Mountain Cyberspace Symposium, and each individual was honored at the symposium for providing innovative STEM learning opportunities in their classrooms. So some outstanding work from our teachers there. You may notice on Fox 21 that there is a new game show, and our Palmer Ridge High School Knowledge Bowl team participated recently in the inaugural season of the Rocky Mountain Quiz Show. We cannot share that outcome yet. Mr. Schwartz, nope, not even for a large sum of money. I will not share that outcome. But the team did perform well, very well, and the episodes are planned throughout the spring and through the fall. So watch and stay tuned to find out how our team did and how much prize money is available for scholarships and more. We had inaugural Prairie Winds Elementary School Literacy Night, where more than 200 individuals attended the first ever Prairie Winds event, and the goal was to capture the joy and love of literacy that students exhibit and create as a bridge between school and home. So families listened and watched a puppetry show performed by Katie Williams and Theater Works and received a gift bag with several books. So we're very grateful for that inaugural event and our partnership. And recently, Palmer Ridge High School also facilitated their Make-A-Wish Week with the goal of raising $18,000 for the family of David, who's this year's Wish Kid. David's wish is for his family to have a court to share a love of sports on. And following a week of events capped off by last Friday's assembly, as well as a silent auction, it looks like, although it's not official yet, the goal will be, if not met, very close to it. Lewis Palmer Elementary School student success Cameron Carlisle recently represented District 38 at the Pikes Peak Regional Science and Engineering Fair, and he earned recognition by the U.S. Navy, UCCS, and the Department of Defense after winning first place for his science fair project and received $450 in prizes. So big shout out to Cameron. And you may recall, I know it feels like eons ago, but just a few short weeks ago, we were able to spend a day at the Capitol. So that was a March 1st event with a delegation from District 38. We built inroads, worked to develop a shared understanding, a little bit more about us as a district, and advocated on behalf of the field of education and our district. So big shout out to our hosts, Representative Don Wilson and Senator Paul Lundeen. And on this Friday, another shout out from a Fox 21 perspective, we will be the host, or Lewis Palmer High School will be the host of a live show. So they'll be spending the week in the Tri-Lakes region, spotlighting all the great things in our area. And as a key partner, we will be, again, the hosts of a live show from 5 to 9:30 a.m. Mr. Schwartz, are you up at 5 a.m. or? Okay. Well, we may see you at Lewis Palmer High School then. No. Or you may be seeing us at Lewis Palmer High School.
Is this an event we're allowed to go watch?
You are absolutely welcome. We would love to facilitate that. And you may have noticed a gift in your mailbox as of late. So our second edition of the D38 Dispatch is in the mail. This key communications tool is new this year and allows us to communicate with all of the residents in our district. So you should be receiving that shortly if you haven't already. And also along the lines of community engagement, wanted to make a plug here for a new series or our latest rendition of some Engage and Elevate sessions this spring. This was teased in a recent superintendent spotlight, and we're going to do something a little bit unique this time. Instead of hosting these at our schools and making them a little bit more of a formal presentation, we are going to host these sessions in coffee shops. So it's our goal to leverage these as power listening sessions in order to deepen our understanding and our connections with our community. Vicki is working on fine-tuning those dates, and I'd love to invite any of our board members to be part of those Engage and Elevate sessions. And we'll be publishing a schedule very soon for our community. We're anticipating April, several sessions in April, some in May, and then some also in June. So this is going to be something that will give us a chance to chat over coffee and continue to engage with our community. And then a leadership team update for you. So you may have heard that we are actually saying goodbye to a key member of our team, and that is Misty Manchester. So Misty, if you could, if I can embarrass you just for a moment, come up to the front of the room. We have something for you. We want to say thank you for all of your support and leadership with us, and it's been great to have you with us. She will be actually retiring from education, so we just want to give her a big shout out as she makes her way to the next phase of life. And thank you so much for spending the time that you did with us. And we are proud to also welcome the newest member of, actually she is a member of our leadership team right now, but she is going to be moving into a new role, and that is Mrs. Alicia Welch. So Mrs. Welch, welcome to the Director of Human Resources. We're really excited to have you. And if you're wondering what happens at Prairie Winds Elementary, Miss Eileen Finnegan, who you may recall from a number of years ago, will be filling in as the interim principal between now and the rest of the school year. And the hiring process at Prairie Winds is already underway, so we're excited to work closely with the staff, the families, and students in the community to be able to select a new principal in the very near future. And just a preview of tonight's business agenda. You will see the 23-24 calendar for your final approval, as well as the Portrait of a Graduate and Educator work update. We're really excited for Jess McAllister to help showcase all of the great work that's happened there. And then, as you also heard, we will be sharing some financial updates, including some updated and draft pay schedules for next school year as well. So that's what we have in front of us. Any questions that I can help respond to?
Any questions? Mr. Clausen?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, I think we're ready to
Okay.
move on. So with that, maybe we'll invite Ms. Wetstein. This is agenda item C1, to consider and approve the final 2023-2024 and preliminary 2024 and 2025 district calendars.
Good evening. See if I can pull it up here. Okay, after much discussion during board meetings, as well as at our Parent and Community Engagement Committee meetings and our Staff Collaboration Committee meetings, we are presenting this evening the final proposal for the upcoming school year, 2023-24 school year calendar, along with a preliminary calendar for the following year. We do plan to begin work on that next year's calendar more extensively, so the 24-25 school year calendar will likely come with significant modifications potentially sometime early next year. We'll be asking for input from all stakeholder groups moving forward, along with some of the ideas that have been discussed during board meetings, including a potential 4-day school week, but also looking carefully at where we're placing breaks throughout the year and how we're balancing teacher time with professional development. I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have before your vote this evening.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2023-2024 final district calendar and the 2024-2025 preliminary district calendar as presented.
Second.
Any questions, comments, or concerns?
2 questions.
Sure, go ahead, Ms.
So thank you for presenting the calendar and all the work that you've done on this, from the input from the calendar survey to the parent advisory and community advisory committee, staff collaboration committee. Can you remind us of the timeline from when the committees and the surveys were conducted to where we are now in being approved by the board? About.
I might need some help possibly from Mr. Belcher on that. I believe it might have been January when we launched the whole staff and community survey, which then followed through various discussions and email feedback since that time, including our work sessions and public board meetings.
So there was a lot of opportunity for input from
I'm actually recalling December is when we administered the survey.
It may have been December.
And I think the feedback that we collected was being discussed as recent as, or as early as mid-December, carried into the January meeting or January timeframe. And then the feedback that was gathered through multiple venues, as you just outlined, then really framed the draft calendar that was presented officially last month. So to your point, I think, Ms. Upchurch, there has been about 3 to 4 months worth of various feedback gathering and discussion mechanisms. I would definitely say that the calendar as presented for 23-24 is very comprehensive in the feedback that has been collected from all of those areas of input. And then I think to Ms. Wettstein's point, in terms of how we envision even being more ahead of that curve going into the 24-25 calendar, I think we're envisioning conversations happening as early as this summer going into the fall. Ideally, we would be approving the calendar, I want to say usually on a December, January type of a time frame. We like to get the calendar out about 6 months in advance of when it officially is approved or finalized for the following school year. That begins July, essentially July, August. Hopefully
Yeah, we have
got all that right.
I know we have a deadline to when we have to vote on it, so that's what I was just.
And technically, that deadline is before the end of the school year. So you are still well within your range to be able to approve. However, this is about as late as I recall us doing it over the past few years.
I think so too.
And really from that angle, it's to get as much feedback as we've been able to with a number of different items pertaining to the breakdown of the days and so forth.
Thanks. And then I had one more, and this one, thank you for answering my question earlier, but I just wanted to bring it up. This may be out of order with the agenda item, but it made me ponder and think that recognizing that we have various testing dates for various grades and content areas during the school year from CMAS to NWEAs, is it possible to place the link that shows those testing dates and what grades they are under that calendar link on our district website so that it's a little bit easier access to just click on it and see it for families and educators?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other comments or concerns? Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen? Aye. Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch?
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Wettstein. And I think that we'll move on to item C2, the portrait of a graduate, portrait of an educator update, aligning with priorities 1 through 3. And Ms. Jess McAllister, are you joining us as well? Come on up.
Yes, I'll invite Ms. McAllister up, and I believe she may have another special guest with her as well.
Super.
And Ms. Wood, do we have the slide presentation?
You're almost there.
Oh, is it?
I can do it.
I'll let you drive.
It's okay. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I knew it. Okay.
All right, we are very excited to provide an update to the board and our community this evening about the culmination of the work that has been happening for about 1.5 years now, and the unveiling, if you will, of our portrait of a graduate and portrait of an educator. So I'm going to hand it off to Ms. McAllister, and we'll jump back in here as we get towards the end of our presentation.
Great. Well, thank you for having us tonight to, as Ms. Wettstein said, kind of unveil what we've been up to with this project that's been going on for quite some time. I'm Jessica McAllister, Secondary Programs Coordinator, and I'm going to let my special guest introduce herself.
I'm Ashley Falk, and I'm a junior at Palmer Ridge High School.
So our hope tonight is that we will remind everyone of the purpose of the Portrait of a Graduate and the Portrait of an Educator, talk a little bit about the process, and then also reveal a conceptualization of the product. So we will dive right in. The purpose of a Portrait of Graduate and the Portrait of an Educator is really to kind of serve as our North Star. So we are trying to really get to a point where we are recognizing the cognitive, personal, and interpersonal competencies of our students, and then also the skills that are necessary by our educators for them to meet those demands. We are very interested, and we have been since the very beginning, in this being a co-created product. And so we've been working with students and with our community members and families all along the way. And then last but not least, as I had mentioned before, it's going to be a clear visualization of basically what our priorities are moving forward, and this will be a lens in which we will look through new initiatives, new curriculum, and Ms. Wetstein will talk about that here in just a moment. So when we first began, as was previously mentioned, it was August of 2021, and we knew that we wanted to launch into a project where we would determine what a Portrait of a D38 graduate was. The stipulations behind that project was really that they wanted it to be student-led, and so myself as the secondary programs coordinator, I get to oversee work-based learning, and I knew we had two fantastic interns that were working with us at that time. So they led us through a lot of the work that we had done last year. We established some timelines, we put some questions together, and then we also got to work interviewing all sorts of constituents. So we went to schools, we went to Kiwanis and the DAC, spoke to some alumni, and as you may remember from last year, the very first rendition of our Portrait of a D38 graduate was, as you can see on the screen here in front of you now. We're very proud of it. This displays a lot of the data that was collected by the students. And then that rolled into the next rendition, which looks like this. So as of the very beginning of this year, we got together with our pre-K through 12 leadership team, and we started talking a little bit about our Portrait of a Graduate and some next steps, and that we wanted to vet this work, and we wanted to add in a Portrait of an Educator. So again, we put together a timeline of which to get into this work, organized in the same way the former one was, with developing a plan, conducting some research, and then getting into a creation stage. So sticking with these, I'll dive just a little bit more into them. The plan was really to go back to some of our constituents and to conduct some more research. So we had assembled our building leaders to have student listening sessions with our students. And simultaneously, we were conducting, with the help of Colorado Education Initiative, some listening sessions with our elementary families and community, the Board of Education. You all got to participate in one of those, industry partners, secondary families and community, and then all of our D38 staff. And then we also brought in a listening session with our Spanish-speaking families and community, as led by Tiffany Brown, who we're so thankful for her work on that. So throughout the timeline from September till about November, we were busy collecting all sorts of information. And then it was our opportunity to kind of start to look at that data and to synthesize it. So on the screen in front of you now, you can see we have several student responses, staff responses, family and community, and then also responses from our industry partners. What you'll see next to those numbers are the kinds of questions we asked. They all really centered around what success looks like for students after high school, what skills they need, and then what postures we would need for our teachers to have in order for them to reach those goals. They change a little bit, though. Of course, when we were talking to families, it became a little bit of a different question. And then when we were talking to our industry partners, we were asking them, what are some skills that you'd like to see present in people that you would like to hire? So all in all, we had a lot of information and data that we had collected. We had over 600 data points for Portrait of a Graduate and for Portrait of an Educator separately. And then we assembled a committee, of which Ashley was so wonderful to sit on that with us. And our job at that point was to really theme the data. So we got into some groups and we looked at determining which themes, and you'll see them on the screen in front of you. We had academic, diversity, equity, and inclusion, entrepreneurial, personal, civic, interpersonal, and professional for the graduate, and then pedagogy, diversity and inclusion, learning environments, and professional for the educator. So we then got our committee together. This was about in December. As I mentioned, we had 4 students. One of them is a current student and happens to be sitting to my right. 3 of them were alumni. We had 17 staff members and 16 parents. Little caveat on the parents, a lot of the parents that were on the committee were also staff members as well, so they wear several hats. The first meeting that we had was in January, and that is where we really started to code all of that data that we had. Again, about 1,200 data points. And then we got together in person and the next 2 dates to really prototype what this could look like. So having the themes that had risen to the top, you'll see them on the screen in front of you now. These were not only themes that had risen to the top, but we went ahead and we asked our various constituents what they thought of these themes to make sure that we had them correct. So we reached out to the members of our committee for them to review it. We spoke to members on our educational services team. And then we also reached out to some alumni who were not here to speak to them. So I'd like to share a little bit about what they said.
Just let's pause because I don't know that we can hear. Let's get it right.
Okay.
Because there's no reason to.
Okay.
Should it be really loud?
Maybe start it over. Yeah, I can do that. So while he's getting that set up, I will say the first voice you're going to hear is one of the student interns that helped us last year. She now is in college, and oops, it seems like it's already going again. Oh, no. Let me try again.
Hey, this is Addie Hayworth. Y'all might remember me from the first stages of Portrait of a Graduate. I was honored to work alongside of Jess and Olivia to get this project started. I'm currently a freshman at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm studying graphic design and advertising with a minor in marketing. The cool thing about this project is when I started, I was a student at D38, and I got to research and interview people to figure out what characteristics really described a graduate. And now that I am a graduate, Jess has asked me to speak on those characteristics and just explain how they've shown up in my life today. Navigator is definitely something that I see showing up in my daily life. Being able to enter a classroom both confident and courageous, or talking to a professor is something that definitely gets you ahead in college and something that's really a key to being successful. Problem solving is a huge thing within graphic design. I always say that I love graphic design because it gets to combine the creative and analytical part of my brain. And that is exactly what you need to be a problem solver. And D38 definitely developed that for me by giving me the proper classes that I needed to really start developing my graphic design skills and working through those problems at an early stage. Being a connector is definitely something that is super important when trying to build a community in a new state. I have seen the attributes of caring, empathetic, considerate, and authentic ones that have shown up time and time again when creating lifelong friends through college. Communicating is a huge part of my life today. Being able to express myself to both peers and professors has definitely put me ahead. Finally, being a contributor was key to me finding a job after high school. Being engaging and productive was something that employers were looking for and ultimately landed the jobs that I currently have. D38 has definitely planted each one of these characteristics into my life. It's prepared me for both my academic and my social success at college. It has been an honor to be a part of this program since the beginning, and it's been so cool to watch it grow even after I've graduated. Thank you for letting me speak in front of y'all yet again. Lopes up.
So that's one student perspective. Here's another one coming from another alumni.
Hi, my name is Elena Phillips, and I graduated from Lewis Palmer High School in December of 2021. And after high school, I decided to go for a gap year and take some time to travel. So right now, I am actually talking to you from Chiang Mai, Thailand. I was asked to talk a little bit about the Portrait of a Graduate and how the characteristics and postures in that apply to my life today. And I want to start with communication. Communication is a hugely important thing while traveling, especially being articulate. When dealing with language barriers and culture differences, it's incredibly important to be articulate in your communication. Connecting with people. I have had the privilege of meeting and connecting with so many people from all over the world and all walks of life, and it is very, very important to be considerate and authentic when connecting with them and communicating with them, and I've truly met some really amazing people whom I think will be friends for life, and they are also incredibly considerate and authentic people. And lastly, navigating. I especially love the definition of a navigator here. Courageous, thoughtful, agile, confident. All are characteristics that I have used throughout my travels navigating the world, quite literally, especially when things don't really necessarily go the way I want them to, and I need to quickly find my way somewhere and quickly find a solution to something. All of these things, being courageous, thoughtful, agile, and confident, are incredibly important in that. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful Monday evening.
Next one. This is the last one. Oh, that one still doesn't work well. Hold on.
Hello, Board of Education. Ms. McAllister, thanks for having me. My name is Ryan Mules. I am class of 2020 Palmer Ridge graduate here in Washington, D.C. at my university, the Catholic University of America. And I'm super excited to talk to you guys about the Portrait of a Graduate. I'm really excited to have been a part of that. I think that the words that were chosen are exactly what it means to be a D38 graduate. Courageous and confident. I really feel that those two were things that they did a really good job of preparing us for, not being afraid to come out to DC, leave all my friends and family behind, and make the most of it. And it's been a really great choice doing that. Being balanced and engaged has made the college experience and life experience so much better. And the district gave us those tools. You know, I'm able to be a full-time student, have a job, Army RTC, clubs, and get to experience this awesome city that I'm in. So really grateful to be a D38 grad. Thank you for your time, and super excited for this project.
Okay, so having vetted all of the attributes that we did, as I mentioned earlier, the next two meetings were us getting together and creating prototypes. So I'm going to let Ashley talk a little bit about how that went for Portrait of a Graduate, and then we'll reveal. What do you think?
So I was able to help create the prototypes for the Portrait of a Graduate and Portrait of an Educator. And the biggest thing was like creating something that resembled our community and that reminds people of like who we are in D38. So this is the Portrait of a Graduate. So when I was in the group like making the prototype for the poster, all of us had the same vision with Mount Herman. So the mountain in the background is Mount Herman with the Palmer Lake star on it. And then all those paths and trails are like the different pathways that each and every one will take after high school. And they're all different and intertwined. And then all the signs are like the attributes that each of the graduates should have, like going their way and what they want to do after high school. And the cool thing is the different colors on the signs are all the colors of all those different schools here in D38.
Another attribute that was really important were the lakes, right?
Yeah.
So that is the just a conceptualization of what we're thinking about for the Portrait of a D38 graduate. And then the same process we ran through with the attributes for our Portrait of an Educator on the screen here in front of you now. I know also in the board packet, so I will just reveal as Ashley shares some of the features we can find in this one.
So this is the Portrait of an Educator. So it lists like the different things they should like, you know, do and like teach and to help the kids do what they want after high school and give them like good advice and learning advice. So, but the main thing is at the top right on the poster, that's a compass. And so it's the teachers and everyone and adults leading the students in different paths and getting the students where they want to be. And then again, around the compass is all the different colors of the schools in the district. And then you have Mount Herman and the Palmer Lake star on the bottom as well.
Okay, so now I think Ms. Wettstein's going to, oh, I'm sorry. So we did then, we did collect information again about the graphics. These graphics were not decided just by a small group of people, but rather a large group, including the committee, including people from educational services team, building principals. And so these were just some of the comments that came of that process. And what Ashley just revealed for you was the consensus that we got from that group. So now Ms. Wettstein can share with you a little bit about next steps.
Okay, well, one of our next steps is to take these conceptual ideas and just do some final polishing of the visualizations, and then we'll work to incorporate both the portrait of a graduate and the portrait of an educator into a new district vision statement. So we've been looking at this visualization for some time with a missing vision. So we'll be bringing you that forward here sometime in the near future. And then our hope is that these documents and these definitions will be embedded into everything that we do. So for our students, we will be working to incorporate these attributes into our curriculum and how we instruct, including we already have some of our schools adding these words into our curriculum map so that what we are instructing aligns with the skills that we're trying to teach our students. We will also share these visualizations broadly with our students, with our teachers, with our families, so that they know our vision for creating productive citizens after high school. And we will use the portrait of a graduate to help facilitate reflection with students, goal setting, and career planning moving forward. For our educators, we will incorporate our definitions of effective educators within our professional development opportunities. We will also use these attributes to identify opportunities for teacher leadership, as well as how we identify mentor teachers and supports for those needing those induction and teacher and administrator induction programs. And then it has the potential to be incorporated into our performance evaluation system as well. And we're happy to have any discussion that you would like at this time.
I'll start. It seems like, well, I know that a lot of work has gone into this. If you added up all the hours and all the people involved, it's an immense amount of work over less than 2 year time period, right? And when I look at like the blank space where the vision statement is and the other work to come, that also feels like we're in the middle of the process. Would you agree that that's where we're at? I mean, we're not at a finality yet, correct?
That is correct. We want to actually still polish the visualizations a bit, and then the real work will begin in how we use these words every day in our instruction, in conversations with students and educators and families, and that will take quite some time to just begin and then to continue to have this be a part of who we are and how we use these attributes moving forward.
And then as we do that, as a district, as a community, how do we know that we've done it? Say 3 to 5 years from now, do we have an idea of any mechanisms in place or reflection mechanisms that we will know that we've incorporated? Because it's so much work. I want it, as one board member, I want it to be very, very usable.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good question, and I'll let others jump in here, but I think that is work yet to do to identify what those measures are. We've talked about many ideas, including, do we use some of this language in how we do student report cards, for example. So I think looking at what would those evidence indicators be a year from now, 5 years from now, is some work that we still need to do.
And then maybe to you, Dr. Summers, how do you envision this being integrated with the long-term strategic plan so that everything is fluid and articulated in a way that's accessible for everybody?
So I'm going to come back to something I think Jess said at the very beginning, which this is the culmination, North Star, of a student and a staff member's experience as it pertains to their trajectory through our system. So I think on one hand, you could portray this in terms of students who are graduating that can articulate, here is how I'm a communicator or a problem solver or a connector or any number of evidences that demonstrate a competency and a passion or a purpose for here's who I am, and less even about what I'm going to do, but here's how I know that I can articulate that or actualize it in whatever experience may be in front of them. Certainly from an educator perspective, I think it's about, and something I don't know that was mentioned yet, but I just want to call it out. In addition to the descriptors based on that compass, there's also a grounding statement that I think bears mention. D38 will provide educators with the time, resources, encouragement, and professional development necessary to support them in feeling successful, valued, fulfilled, and balanced in work and life. Well, I look at that as both an aspirational and somewhat of an inspirational statement. And what does it take every day to ensure that our people, our staff, are actually experiencing that? So that can be through a number of different methodologies that we can capture their voice and, again, their experience. So this is both a culmination in terms of where people can see themselves as they're making their progression through, again, their day in, their day out here. It's also a guideline. It's a path that we're all walking, and I think that's something that's really neat about the design being something that allows students to carve their path as they're working through their evolution in childhood into young adulthood, as well as how we're guiding that path and how we're making sure that we're taking care of all of ours in that process. So I know that's a little bit more of maybe what you're even going for. To me, these aren't just like metrics. I think we can establish metrics that then are further articulated within our strategic plan. But as we talk about how the lived experience of our people, of what makes us unique here, whether it be from a student perspective, obviously a staff member perspective, and then I think the glue that comes through all of this is how we partner closely with our families and how this is a community effort all together. We want this to be experienced by each individual, but also by the collective in an effort that demonstrates what it means to be part of our community as a whole. So it really is the capstone, if you will, of everything that we're putting forth, from the pillars of our values to our different priority aspects of our strategic plan. And it's the living and breathing mission and vision that describes the full experience from a whole student perspective as well as a whole adult or employee perspective, and how all that comes together.
Since we have Ashley here, can I ask, you're a junior now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And had this been a part of the fabric in your school the last 2.5 years, how might it have been different for you?
I think it would have given me like a better like perspective and more information about like different things I should like have and like attributes of myself, like preparing me for college and like, you know, the real world, like when I'm out, you know. So I think it would have like incorporated like different insights on like what I should like be practicing and like skills I should have for when I leave high school.
Great, thank you. Mr. Schwartz?
Most of my questions have been echoed. I just wanted to see if I could maybe summarize. First of all, great work. Right? It's nice innovation. It's good to step outside of the academic box and try to do something that's an and, not an or to the academics, and make it part of the DNA of a quality academic system, which we have and intend to maintain and hopefully grow. My questions are really simple. Ms. Phillips said it very articulately, but as we move forward, can we get crystal is the wrong word, a nice illustrative image of what success looks like, both from the system standpoint, student standpoint, and the educator standpoint, and how we will know or measure it. It doesn't have to be binary, because this feels like a non-binary process program, but it should be something that we can put our fingers on so that we know where we need to make course corrections and when we should celebrate victories. Okay? Not necessarily in that order, by the way. And then lastly, maybe a thought here is what it sounds like from the graduates who are off at university now is life skills. And their life, at least by your research, their life success skills. So if in fact that's the case, maybe we call that out. Just a thought.
Can you say a little bit more about that, just so I'm following?
Things that may not be purely academic.
Yeah.
That are skills that people need in a 21st century society to be successful and fulfilled.
That's exactly what we were intending for these words to help us guide and to embed in all of our instruction. So I appreciate those
I pulled
comments.
it right out of your notes, Amber.
Ms. Upchurch?
So it's interesting because I think all three of our minds are on the same wavelength right here. When we see this portrait of graduate work being done across the region, the state, and the country, we see this happening in a lot of different districts. I applaud that this work, how it applies to our students in our community. And we're not just following a cookie cutter print, we're engaging our students, our staff, our community business leaders, and our community leaders and families to direct this. And with the hope that this gives us a pulse and a metric to be intentional versus just doing something to do something, right? Makes sense? So the way I see this is that the entire point of it is to determine how to best prepare our students in our community and in our schools for the success beyond our D38 halls. And I love that it lists the skills and themes which are in addition to the basics of strong reading, writing, and math skills that come out of our schools. Because as these students just said, they need other skills that are not necessarily intuitive, that are learned. And so having that learning environment, I think, is really important work. And so that I appreciate and applaud. It made me think of something else, though. It made me think of, I recalled when you, Mrs. McAllister, and Dr. Brahm and a few other team members shared a trail map of the various opportunities our students have along their journey, from internships to apprenticeships, CTE, concurrent or dual enrollment, AP, et cetera. And then there was also a presentation on what we measure in terms of growth and success for accountability purposes, like our CMAS and our pre-SAT, SAT scores. Perhaps we can elevate those paths within this presentation when it gets completed and put on our website to blend the two presentations as a bigger picture of the whole of D38. Are you following? So taking that presentation and showing how that is incorporated and how that works within this realm also, once it's all done and published, I think would be great to analyze and look at for all of our community.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that is something that we can consider, and also recognizing that these visuals that we're sharing with you this evening are our vision for after high school.
Right.
Where when Ms. McAllister presented on the programming that we currently offer, the focus really is during high school. So I think we just have to think about how would those live together.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good stuff.
Mr. Clausen, do you have anything you'd like to add to the discussion?
I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's wonderful work. It's wonderful to see where you've gotten to now. I had the pleasure of being in on one of the in-person meetings, and at the time it was like, wow, this is a lot of work. And so it's wonderful to see it in an illustrated form now, and it's exciting to know what that can move us into now. So we look forward to an upcoming presentation. And Ashley, thank you so much for taking time on a school evening to come. The context you provide is really important and helpful. So thank you for being here. Thank you to you both as well.
Thank you.
We're going to invite Mr. Ridgway up, actually, for the next two agenda items. C3 is our first one, the financial planning and analysis and audit report. This aligns with priority 5. Priority 5 is fiscal stewardship.
Looks like I lost a student. Okay, Brett Ridgway, Chief Business Officer, here for the regular financial planning and analysis presentation, and supplemented with this time with the audit report. I will go ahead and start with that with a little context. So to recall that I started with the district after the July 4th weekend, and I split time between here and my prior role for the full month of July. And then as we rolled into August and had some conference time and some school kickoff information or time, then we had experienced a change in human resources right away, and that required me to backfill some of that capacity through the month of September. So it really wasn't until the month of October that I got to focus on closing out the fiscal year. And part of the reason why I just wanted to set that context is to why are we talking about this now here in March when the fiscal year ended 9 months ago. But there was a lot to that was happening in that regard, and a lot to reset and fix and adjust for the presentation of this year's financial report. So in the packet, the item that we have in board docs and what we all have posted on the website is the final audit report, which is 104 pages long. This is a lot of scripted information in many ways, and so, but yet there is still value to what that script says. So if you want to only look at one thing, you would look at the independent auditor's report, which we have bookmarked there, and you can go straight to that page. And I actually highlighted what is the key phrasing in here in terms of, is this a good audit report or is it not a good audit report? Again, it's scripted. Even the words that are used here are scripted, but it's that first sentence that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the government activities and discretely presented component unit, each major fund and the aggregate remaining fund information for District 38. So that is the one thing that you should always be looking for to say, okay, what does this audit report really tell me out of this 104 pages. It really comes down to that one paragraph. Now, of course, there's still a lot of value to the information that's in here. So I'm not suggesting you can skip the rest of it, but that is kind of the first comfort point that you can, the point of orientation and the point of comfort you can see and achieve and say, okay, what's in here, everything else that's in here is stuff that's good information to be processed, but always with that context behind it. So something I would orient to then next would be in the bookmark called the basic financial statements. And this is a series of 4 financial statements, and what it does is show you the financial results in 2 different perspectives. One being what we call full accrual accounting, which is what a lot of people are used to. Where's our capital assets? What's the value of those capital assets, et cetera? Do we do depreciation? All those things. And then there's the cash basis or pseudo cash basis perspective of accounting that we normally present here on a month-to-month basis, and that's what CDE is most concerned with. So this first statement is the statement of net position, and so this is akin to a balance sheet, but again, it's not called balance sheet, it's called statement of net position. So it does communicate some different things, most notably that it has the value of capital assets on here, and so it's a much bigger balance sheet than what we see on a month-to-month basis. It also has on here things related to para. And so the net pension liabilities that we are now required to report. And that's something that really actually kind of bothers me, because it really scuttles the usefulness of this entire statement, because of the numbers are so large, and because of the way that para allocates it to its units, i.e. school districts, it does not provide a good, accurate representation of what the state net position is. But that's the process that we have to pursue, have to follow, and so that's what we have done. Because what it tells you here is that we have this underwater net position of $11 million. Well, that's a very paper and very theoretical number that is created mostly by the fact that these net pension liabilities, what is happening at para, or the state of para, I should say, right now, it creates that huge number, which materially overstates everything else that's really happening in the school district.
Since you were a student enough to broach this subject, which I spent a little time on this afternoon with one of the investment houses, can you please explain to the public what's driving this number in the state of para fiscally versus its obligations, so that they understand how we get to this end?
So para, Public Employees Retirement Association, is the retirement program for all state employees. It is a pension program. It's a defined benefit program as opposed to a defined contribution program. That's what a 401k is, defined contribution. However much you put in, you earn on that, that's what you're able to withdraw. A defined benefit program is more like Social Security. That you contribute to it for the years, and then when you have that retirement age, then you'll receive a specific benefit. The way that these type of programs are measured is basically for their solvency is to determine whether they are fully funded or not, and if they are not fully funded, do they have a plan to become fully funded, meaning the cash reserves and their expected future incomes, how will that match with their expected future payments? Para is solvent, but it is not fully funded, and it's on a track that is going to take many years to become fully funded. And that's kind of that point of good, happy spot, that comfort spot that, okay, it's solid, it's fully funded. And it'll take, at this point, somewhere between 20 and 30 years for it to become fully funded. That's why so much of our expenses are devoted towards para, to catch up and to recover from I think some decisions that were made by para in the late 90s into the early 2000s, where they got a little bit too aggressive with some of their decisioning and how they were awarding those benefits for the defined benefits. And then when the Great Recession hit, things got backwards really fast. And so they've been trying to scramble and dig out of that ever since. And so it's a big task that they have. They are working on it. They're doing I think a good and admirable job of trying to recover from that right now. But it is a big number, and part of the new GASB requirements, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board requirements, says that we must, as a participating entity, show what is theoretically our portion of that unfunded liability. And that's what $62 million sits on our statement of net position, is our number for that. So every school district has to show this equivalent, this same type of idea, and for every school district, it takes their statement of net position and turns it upside down.
Right, and so it's all proportional to the size of employees that you have on the retirement plan.
Yes. And it's nothing that we did or did not do that creates it. As a school district, we're just reporting it.
But does the law say that if para does not have the money to make payments to retired employees, that the district has to make those payments?
No.
Okay, and so that was why I wanted to get to this point, both for the public and for my peers. It's not a fictitious number, but it's not a functional number.
Right.
It's really a derivation of the amount of District 38 former employees on the retirement plan, and is it the perceived actuarial number of payments till their perceived lifespan ends?
I would say I wouldn't say it's even that accurate, because the number that's on here really has nothing to do with D38 employees in the future.
Right.
It's a point in time measurement, a very theoretical as if allocation of the liability.
Yeah, and so kudos to you for calling it out. And again, Mr. Taylor's a CPA. If he was here, he would know this cold. I'm not a CPA, but
you are the treasurer.
I am the treasurer. That's right.
So,
and it's important that the public understand that this is not a District 38 fiscal legal liability. It is a fictitious number that's allocated to us based on the position of para financially and based on the obligations that they have legally. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the statement of net position for the good and for the bad of it. Again, there's the good that shows the value of the capital assets, and then there's the bad again of that kind of forced accounting item on there that really devalues the impact and the value of the entire statement. The next is the statement of activities, which has a similar flavor to it in that it's a full accrual basis, and you'll see that it reconciles to that same negative $10 million number. And so there's some information on here that's a little bit useful, but again, when your orientation point has that kind of much noise in it, it really compromises its value, its utility, I feel to anyone who would like to look at that statement. So what becomes most available is the information that is consistent with what you normally see and what we present to CDE, and that starts with the following page, which is the balance sheet. And so this is better information for us to see, but it also is an indication of an opportunity for confusion, because you've heard me speak before between a difference between general funds, plural, and the general fund, singular, right? Here, and this is prescribed. It's not like the auditors have a choice in this, but here we have a column labeled general, but it is not the general fund. It is general funds, plural. So it includes more than what we have in the general fund. And of course, we have some other funds which are fairly clean, fortunately, because of our size. And then there's a column over on the right called non-major governmental funds, which includes 4 different funds together, which don't necessarily relate together. It includes some capital money and some food services money and some transportation money, and let's just slam it all together and present it. So again, some better utility and better information. Still not great, which is why I want to present to you on a monthly basis, what I think is a much better and more precise view for you to see. One number here that I will call to your attention is under that general funds column is the total fund balance, which is shown as $14.9 million. And so I want you to kind of just file that number away when we get to the other statements here, and I can show you how that relates to that. In fact, that whole bottom row, that's $6.8 million, the $8.1 million there on the bond redemption and capital reserve, I can show you how those would tie in really well to what I present to you. And then finally, there's a reconciliation between the statement of net position and the balance sheet. So it kind of tells you all these things that are happening on one but not the other and what the value of those differences are. Finally, there's this thing called the Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balance. That's a nice long title for what would otherwise be called an income statement. But again, because we are operating in the public sector and in government accounting, we don't make income, so we can't call it an income statement. We have to call it this nice, long, clear, descriptive, but confusing title. And this will, again, be, provide numbers that are much more normal to your perspective and reconciles to that fund balance number that showed on the balance sheet. So that's just 4 pages of this, and there's a lot more information behind here. Is all the notes to the financial statements if you have particular questions about accounting policies and what is our capital asset positions, how do we account for capital assets, our long-term debts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of, again, very scripted, normal information to this. I think the last piece I would want to bring your attention to is in this single audit section, and I probably would go a little bit further back and take you to page 99. And when I came on board here, part of my interview questions was to say, hey, that we had 6 internal control comments in the prior year audit. Will you be able to help us with those? And so what they're doing in the back here is going through those internal control comments and telling you some of what they have observed, and to tell you whether that status has been, whether that item has been corrected, or has it not been corrected. It's kind of to your favorite, one of your favorite terms. It's a binary thing. It's either fully corrected or it's not fully corrected. There is still a lot of progress, I believe, in this one, like property taxes, specific ownership tax accounting. We got, I would say, 90% of the way there in terms of the corrections that needed to be made, but there was actually one error in a spreadsheet of mine that prevented us from having it completely correct. And so binary, that means it wasn't fully corrected. So of the 6 comments that we had last year, 4 of them were fully corrected. The other 2 were largely corrected, but not quite to the 100% level. And so those comments remain in this year's version. And I want to make sure that I'm at the right place for that.
While you're doing that, 2 quick questions.
Sure.
Are there any negative repercussions to the district staff or students by them not being fully corrected?
No, it's just a timing issue.
Okay.
Because again, part of the audit is to help us make sure that things are correct. So these are corrections that they identified and helped us book to make sure that those financial results are complete and accurate in every material respect.
Thank you.
Sure. So before I move on and leave audit report, is there anything you'd like to say, ask?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
On that same page, when you were at page 99, the summary of
99.
scheduled findings year end.
Yep.
What does it mean when you brought up property tax and specific ownership taxes condition and the status? When it says see findings 2022-002, I can understand what 2022, that's the year.
Okay.
What does 002 mean?
That means it's comment number 2.
Okay.
So onto the next page, it says here, property taxes, that's 2022-02. So that's kind of their further explanation of it. There's still not a lot of clarity in terms of the way this is written as to what it is, but that's their notation.
Can you explain that particular one? That's the one that raised my flag also. What does that, can you put that in layman's terms of what that means?
So we operate in this public sector on a cash basis of accounting, except for a couple of specific things. One, we accrue payroll at the end of the year, and two, we accrue property tax revenue at the end of the year as we go into July and into August. And so the way that we're tracking all that activity is through some analysis and some spreadsheets of the information we receive from the county treasurer. And so, as I had mentioned, the spreadsheet that I used to do that accounting had one error in it where it was assigning money instead of to the 21-22 fiscal year, it was assigning it to the 22-23 fiscal year, meaning the year that we're currently in. So it was just a timing issue again of which year was it being accounted to. They said no, that money should go into the prior fiscal year, whereas my analysis had said it would go into the current fiscal year.
Okay, so it was an error of date reporting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Then I'll go back into board docs, and I will pull up the normal financial package here.
Oh, I thought you meant, are there any more questions? I still had questions on the audit.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My apology. How many other school districts does this particular accounting firm or auditing firm serve?
I don't know offhand, but it's a big one, and they do quite a bit.
Okay.
So they do Monument Academy, I know that, and I would estimate of the 178 school districts, I assume they would do a good 30 to 40 of them, plus several charter schools.
Okay, so then what opportunities do you think, or did the audit firm see as opportunities that the district could improve on? Besides those two flags of just fix these things, but was there anything else that was discovered or thought of that we could improve on for our financial record keeping?
There is a report that they write specifically for the board members that I still need to forward to you on that. But I think it probably wouldn't be any surprise that they would like to see some stability in terms of the staffing in this role, because they have been in some ways the best expert of the financial leadership of the district, with all the turnover that has been here in the last 5 years. They're the ones that have been consistent and maintained some of that institutional knowledge in a way for us from their outside perspective. So I think that is something that they would really be looking forward to.
So how did they describe the overall financial condition of D38?
It's good.
That's all I had questions on
Okay.
that. Thanks for getting, and you'll get that
Yeah.
state. Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Anything else on this report?
Yeah, maybe a summary statement from the treasurer's office.
Sure.
Thank you. It's a great report. It's a significant step forward. Thank you for doing it. We hire the auditors. The auditors ensure that we're compliant with the laws of the state. We are compliant with the laws of the state.
Mm-hmm.
And if they make recommendations, it's up to your office, Mr. Ridgway, to decide if they're a good business decision for us to take forward or not.
Right.
And we trust you to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
We'll move forward.
Okay. So, in the regular financial report, hopefully we're getting more and more used to this as time goes on, and so I've spent a lot of time focusing, and I want to continue to focus on the graphical presentations that I have starting here on page 6, and we've spent a lot of time on these two graphs throughout the course of the year. And a lot of it has been leading up to, this is the report for February, right? We're here in March, this is the report for February. So I've been talking all through the fall and winter about how the February trough is something that we had to have our eyes on and watch how that came together. And so what you can see here in this report for February on the top graph, the activity statement, which is again akin to an income statement as a year-to-date on a year-to-date view. You can see that at the end of February, we got down to our cash and reserves level of under $1 million. And this is, again, this is the example of why we are starting the year with $14 million, because our cash flow requires us to do that so that we can hit this February trough and get payroll and all of our responsibilities funded through that month of February before property tax revenue starts hitting through the course. I wanted you to remember that $14 million number from the audit report, and that is very similar, as you can see, to this, except that this is the general fund singular, Fund 10. That other number included Funds 18 and Fund 19 as well, and that's why it was bigger than what you're seeing here. But that is the correlation between what you see in the audit report and then what you see here that I present to you. So the good news is we made it through the February trough. We got to March 10th when our property tax payments came from the county, and we begin to recover our cash position as we go out throughout the rest of the spring here.
What do you anticipate the orange bar to be at the end of March?
I would anticipate the orange bar at the end of March to be probably somewhere around $5 million.
Okay. And then continuing to move up and to the right to meet the, is that teal? I'm not very good with colors. The teal bar at the end of the year.
Yeah, the dark, I don't know. To me, it's dark
royal
blue or
blue.
royal blue.
It's not binary, Brett.
It's not, yeah, that's very, very shades of blue. Not. So yes.
Anyhow, most importantly, yeah. So this trough is really important to us as a district because it consumes funds that could be used for the students because of the lumpiness of the revenues or income as they arrive. It's just important for us to begin to understand that.
Yes, what you'll, if you go to the next page and we talk about our general fund revenue summary, and I've highlighted this a few times throughout the course of the year so far, that local revenue number, which is still very low through the end of February, you'll see this take a marked jump when we look at the March numbers. There'll be about $6 million that comes in on top of the $2 million so far, for local revenue.
Based on what you've learned so far, window of risk is probably too harsh a term. This trough, is it a 30-day dynamic, a 60-day dynamic?
I would say at its tightest point, it lasts from February 27th, when we do payroll, to March 10th. So
But
it's
from
about 2
comfort
weeks.
zone to comfort zone, is it about a 30, 45-day dynamic?
I probably would call it more like 45-day, yeah.
Okay.
Going back into January,
Right.
because when we make that January payroll and we start to hit in February, it's like, okay, now's when we know things are going to be tight.
Right.
We're going to have to be really careful as we do things through the course of February.
Right.
And watching that on a regular basis and making sure that we can get through this deepest part of the cycle.
And just for clarity, this fund, is it inclusive or exclusive of our funds for capital maintenance and things like that?
It is exclusive of that. This is general
So if
fund
we were to have a
operations.
major boiler go out and it was an $800,000 expense, those funds are there.
Well, that would be a big boiler,
But
but
my point is,
yes, there are capital reserves, capital
Right.
monies we have available.
but that's important for the public to understand.
Yes.
Right, that this is our operating money, not our money to fix big problems.
Right, and we're trying to take care of all those priorities with a high level of precision and integrity and intentionality to make sure that we don't want to be risky, certainly not even cavalier about it, but we also don't want to be overly conservative in operating out of fear.
Exactly right.
Right.
We still drive a vehicle with airbags during this trough.
Yes. So beyond that, if we look into the expense, which is where the graphs and the following pages start to talk about. Again, the common way to look at the expenses, since expenses happen fairly equal throughout the year, is to match where we are in our total expense spend versus how much of the year has progressed, has been completed. So Through February, we're 2/3 of the year, of the fiscal year complete. So we're at 66.7%. And then matching that with the percentage of expense spend that we have hit by the end of February as well. You'll see that that number here on the total spend is 63.4%. So we're operating at a little bit less than budget on the expense side, which of course is good because we've also operated a little bit less than budget on the revenue side so far year to date. And so that is, again, just indicative of our intentionality for how we're managing it and making sure that our pace matches what we are able to cash flow throughout this point of the year. And so this is the total district view. These pages behind there start to look at different pieces of that district view, looking at school locations. There's a little bit, it ticks up a little bit, and then you can start to look at individual school locations and see where they're at as well. Just as, for your point of interest. Remember that there is additional detail numbers, and it tells you which page to go to here if you want to look at more numbers, more detailed numbers for any particular school or department in here.
Okay, I'm going to test Ron's knowledge and see if it matches yours. On that, the total district general fund, what is that trend variance? Go back up to the graph.
The gray, light gray.
Yeah, 10. Yep, right there. That light gray shaded where it says trend variance.
Yes, yeah. With the way it's showing on the screen here, there's something right in here that is in very light gray. Okay, and so you said you're testing Ron, so you want him to answer that?
No, I want just.
I
took a swag at
it. You took a swing at that?
Said it's a linearity variance.
Okay, so again, we're 2/3 of the year complete. If this trend happened for the rest of the 4 months of the fiscal year, that tells you what that final variance would be. So it's just an extrapolation of the year to date.
That's wrong. It's extrapolation of the year to date or the full year?
It's an extrapolation of the year to date towards a full year equivalent.
So it is a linearity variance?
Yes.
I got lucky.
So what it says, again, and I'm sorry, folks in the audience can't see, there's a number right here. If I highlight it, you actually start to see it. It says 1.107, and that says, hey, when we say that we are 63.4% spent and 66% of the year is completed, what is that number? And that number is $1.1 million. If that same pace continued throughout the rest of the year, that 1.1 would become 1.7 million. It's in light gray, so it's not really invisible on a regular screen, but it's not really easy to see in this screen here.
Ron got a 98.3%.
Actually,
correct.
Ron got it wrong in all candor. It's a full year projection, not a linearity variance year to date.
Yeah, it's a full year. The left side number is the extrapolation, the full year number of that year.
I have a failing grade on this, Ms. Upchurch.
Oh, well, he said 66%.
So it's good news, again, that we're here in March. We've made it through the trough, and we're on through the spring when our cash position gets replenished. I have, we also earlier in the year spent some time on these earlier pages. I think I've told you in the past that this page number 3 is the one page that statute says that you need to have. The data that's on here, I should say, is the one page that you need to have. And I've tried to add, I know this is numbers, not graphs, but I've tried to add some, some good description, some point of clarity as to what you're seeing there. Being able to box the various capital programs on here. And there's one thing in particular that I want you to take note of that we have talked about for a while, but you have not seen anything yet. And that is the fact that I have actually created these 2 new funds that we've talked about, MLO operations and capital maintenance fund, and I've started to populate them. It's only populated for the budget right now. But as this spring continues, we will start to see actuals then populate for how is that MLO money being spent. a lot of accounting work and a lot of machinations still to do behind the scenes to make that, but I've at least got them created and got the budget in here populated. Anything else? Because the next topic's going to take longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
Okay.
And thank you for including the MLOs there now.
Sure.
So we are now, as I understand you, heading to agenda item C4. We're previewing the 2023-2024 pay schedules and budget, and you're providing a budget planning update, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. So some of this at the beginning is some rehash, so I will go pretty quick here at these early slides, and then we'll slow down as we get to some of the new information. We've had here kind of our plan for the whole late winter and springtime as it relates to the strategic plan and the budget. So we are here in March where we wanted to seek approval of the calendar, which we did, and propose the updated pay schedules, which is what we're doing now. And to come here next month is we'll approve those schedules. We'll also, I think, do some work on this particular policy, which I'll give you some preview of later in the slide here. We've had our categories approach that we've stayed true to throughout this process. By the way, when you see a blank page like this, the reason I have those in there is because I am prepared if someone wants to actually print this out hard copy and print it double-sided, it'll give a good setup for print that way. So that I probably could say this page intentionally left blank, but I didn't.
And Mr. Ridgway, as you move along, can you just provide page numbers at times for Mr. Clausen's benefit?
I have, okay, so say the page numbers, is what you're saying.
Please, thank you.
All right, so moving on to page 5. Again, this is the projection for student count. So we spent a lot of time, establishing these two key variables of funded student count and per pupil revenue as determine what happens with our overall School Finance Act revenue. And we have these two different entities that we are observing through here, being the operated schools and Monument Academy. I don't think there's much new information through here as we scan through page 5, 6, 7, and we get here to page 8, which is maybe a place to settle on, although I think we here in this setting have seen this information already. This focuses on a per pupil revenue rate change of 8% that we see right there in the middle of the screen, and a total district increase in student count of 46 students. And so that is creating an increase of just under $5.1 million of new money for the entire district, for the total district. And so a question then becomes is how much of that new money is going to be available to the operated schools and how much of that is going to be available to Monument Academy. And so that's why on the right side of this screen, we have those numbers that detail that 3.6 million of that is going to be for the operated schools, 1.5 million of that is going to be for Monument Academy, and then going vertically up those particular roles is where we identify what is driven from change in rate, meaning that per pupil rate increase, and what's changing from volume, meaning the student count increase. The whole point of emphasizing this through these several meetings is because I want to draw with the intentional correlation between changes in per pupil rate and changes in staffing compensation rate and changes in student count volume and changes in staffing count volume. Those should have some good clear correlations to that. And so that's been the whole point of pursuing this the way we have through these last few meetings. I've shown you this slide as we move on to page 9. And I think this is basically where we left off in the last meeting, was to say if those revenue assumptions hold true and we apply those assumptions into the expense load, here's how it could and should, in my opinion, be allocated and calculated through. So we see here on the upper left under the projected change under the PPR, you see the 8% rate variance. Then you see a slight, because now at this point on this slide, we're focusing in only on the operated schools. So we've kind of left Monument Academy off on that prior slide. And from here on, we're only focusing on the operated portfolio. And so we have a rate variance of 8%. We have a negative volume variance in pupil count because we're showing just a slight decline in that from this year in the operated schools. So that's identifying kind of, again, the components of our new money. $3.6 million. That should be familiar to what we talked about on the prior page. And then we also talked, I think last time, and I wanted to reset that, is that we have these first take adjustments as we go down this column of how that new money could be applied. And first take adjustments are not meant to be first in orders of priority. It's just something that has a material impact to it that we need to keep in mind as we're doing the rest of the conversation, which is really what we're wanting to talk about in terms of compensation and such. And we've talked about, we have to go back into January, wanting to have a slightly increased investment in capital maintenance and projects, where this year we allocated $2 million to that, and we wanted to increase it to $3 million. So right now, we've got that extra $1 million, which represents that difference of going from 2 to 3, allocated here, or shown here. And so that takes this projected change of $3.6 million down to $2.6 million. And then how will we use that $2.6 million in terms of applying that into personnel costs and into implementation costs? The way that this particular slide is designed to work is to draw a connection between the use of new money for personnel over here onto a box in the upper right, which translates that into an average across the district potential change in compensation if this was the number. So if $2.3 million in total was the number for personnel costs, of which we would say there's some negative volume component to that, again, because student count is going down slightly, then that would create $2.5 million of potential money, new money, to be applied into compensation. And we have to remember that para takes a portion of that. And so of that $2.5 million, $470,000 of that would go into the para and Medicare. That'd leave $2 million available for gross pay changes. And if we applied that to the total general fund gross pay amount of $32.8 million, that would represent a 6.3% potential increase to gross pay for all those in the general fund. And so that connection of that 6.3% number to the 8% per pupil revenue rate number, again, is what I'm wanting to draw here. That it should be something around a 1%, maybe 150 basis points connection between what happens to per pupil revenue rate and what's going to happen to pay.
Just a quick clarifying question, because I don't recognize that I've seen it before, but maybe I have. The 5.89% to the right outside of the box.
Yes.
How does that relate to the 6.3% in blue?
So that the 5.89% is the total change of 2.544 against the total personnel costs of 43.2. So it's taking out the benefit piece. Benefits, para and Medicare are taking their share, but their percentage isn't increasing as much as we're talking about increasing gross pay. Right? We're talking about increasing gross pay by 6%. That's, for this purposes, is basically staying flat on the para and Medicare side. So the combined total is the 5.89%.
Okay.
So it's a disproportionate increase
Yes.
for the employees.
Yes.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure. So this is where I with that set up, this is what I wanted to get to on this slide number 10. Which is to say, okay, that's great if that's all we can do. And in many normal years, that would be all we could do, is to say what new revenue rate money can we apply into compensation. But we've taken the challenge as a leadership team to look for efficiencies and opportunities in our current spends and try and turn some of that back into the compensation schedules. And so this slide, what it does is starts with that same $2.5 million number in the yellow highlighting, and it says what happens if we were to add $500,000 to that, meaning we wanted to find $500,000 worth of efficiencies and opportunities in our current run rate trend and reallocate it or reapply it into the compensation schedules. And so this green highlight follows around and says, well, that could result in us getting to total pay change of 7.5%. So that's 1.2% of delta for that $500,000. And so that's kind of why I provide it there as a nice round number. Hey, if you change that 2.5 by $500,000, that could provide an extra 1.2% of average across the district. Notice I'm always saying carefully average across the district. I'm never saying across the board. Across the board means everyone would get the same number. Everyone does not get the same number. It's average across the district. So that's what we do if we did $500,000, and I have kind of a stretch target to say let's do that and another $650 to get us to about $1.1 million of identified efficiencies and opportunities in the current run rate budget to apply that into compensation. And what could that do for us? That could get us up over the 9% level. So this would be a disproportionate change, again, as you mentioned, to compensation, not only from what we get from the new money, but identifying some things that we can retask current funds towards. Yes, sir.
I just want to highlight the magnitude of this work. So we started out with 2.5 million, and in a scenario where I believe the number is 83% of all the money that comes in goes out to employee pay, we're able to, you and the team were able to increase that 2.5 by nearly another 40%.
And that's not an easy task, and
That's
and
correct.
it's not a direction that doesn't have repercussions.
That's correct.
And impacts.
That's correct.
But it's been an exercise that we've been pursuing for really the last couple of months with our leadership teams to look at our programs and our staffing levels and our service levels and say, what can we do to tighten things up a bit?
Yeah, and just to note, this is on a reoccurring basis.
Yes.
Item 1. And item 2, it really takes intellect to understand the depth and the breadth of all the goes in-as and all the goes out-as to find $1 million out of roughly 17% of 50 million, right? Which would be 10% is 5, so roughly $7 million.
Yes, but I would say some of it is coming from the personnel, retasking personnel too.
Yeah. So it's great. It really is impressive work. And to the team's credit, I was there Wednesday when it was presented to the SCC, and they gave a roaring round of applause.
Yes, thank you. That was fun to see.
Yep.
So the number I want you to remember a particular number off of this schedule. So of that 9% scenario, remember this number of 2.991. That's how many general fund dollars it would take to increase pay by that 9% is 2.991. So as we go to, I'll skip a couple. Well, trying to pick up the pace according because we don't want to lose from the coughing. Here are some of the.
There was no subliminal message.
No subliminal
for the
Okay.
record.
All right, no, keep it up. No, keep increase
Just need
the
to
pace.
drink some water.
Okay, so so here in terms of what was presented to both the district leadership team last week as well as the staff collaboration committee, here are 5 strategies that we are going to be building this year's budget on. So number 1, we want to push towards a significant adjustment to base pay rates via distributed adjustment, a dollar adjustment to all cells in pay schedules, and we'll spend some time on that. Number 2, we're going to implement an anniversary payment program. So this would be a new program that we have not had to this point. That is basically a longevity and loyalty type of flavor to it, based on some feedback going back from the Staff Collaboration Committee, which was the number 1 thing, create a program for loyalty and longevity bonuses. So we have heard that and are pursuing that. We're going to have a slight dial back of the new hire and hard to fill placement incentives that we started last year. And a couple of smaller ones, or one small one, but still going to be impactful, is the introducing of a health savings account, health insurance option, and number 5, extend experience credit granted hire with the go-forward adjustment for past hires whose experience had been limited or truncated based on the policy book previously. So let's go through those. On this page is the summary of the proposed pay changes for next year, and the pay schedules that would drive that is what we would talk next. Orienting ourselves in the lower right-hand corner, I've highlighted in yellow a number, and this is on page 14, Mr. Clausen, the 2.994 number. That is relation to the 2.991. That was the target from that earlier slide that says, hey, if you can build a set of pay schedules and set of pay adjustments to hit that 2.991, then that will give us an average across the district of that 9%. So that 2.994, again, is general fund. There are other funds that have their own sources of revenue that we don't have to include in that total, notably being what happens in grant funds and what happens in food services. But what does happen in transportation does have an effect on that. So transportation is actually rolled into general fund for this purpose. So if we go vertically up that column, what you see is how much money would be invested in each employee segment according to the calculations and the modeling that I've done. So we start off the top there in that first section where we analyzed 408 teachers that we have being paid from the license schedule currently. And basically, by the way that I do this is I project every individual person's pay change for next year based on these pay schedules, and then I aggregate all that for this summary presentation. So out of the 408 teachers, if we invested $1.6 million of general fund money, $87,000 of grant money, it would be a total change of $1.7 million for teachers, where currently we are spending $21 million. And so that means an average increase, percentage increase of 8.82% for those on the license schedule. The average dollar increase would be $4,300 for each individual person. I like to keep an eye on what's the max and the min, what's the high and the low on any of this modeling. So the highest in this particular scenario would be $5,000, $5,126 for a teacher, which would be 7.15%. The minimum would be $3,748, which would be 7.48%. Kind of an important footnote there to the side is that I am using non-capped 1.0 FTE folks, because if you really included the full population in identifying the mins and maxes, you get a 0.2 part-time number, and that really starts to skew the numbers. So you want to carve off some of those extraneous anomalies to key into what it means statistically for the rest of the group.
Right.
Yes.
So that average is, in your words, across the district, not across the board.
In this case, I would say it's across the segment.
Segment.
It's just for the teachers in
Okay.
this case.
Fair
Okay,
enough.
so the average across the segment is 8.82%. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive when the max was providing a 7% and the min was providing a 7.4%. And I'll show you kind of how that math kind of comes together across a full data set of 400 plus employees, why that results in that way. But let's go through the rest of the segments first. The classified segment again, starting at the $2.99 million, we'd been investing just short of $1 million, $951,000 of that, of general fund new money, pairing that with some grant and nutrition services money to create a total investment pool right at $1 million, $996,000. And that, across that segment of 284 employees, is 14%. Now, I got to provide a lot of caveats to this, because this is a segment that is really wide-ranging. When we have people that are at minimum wage effectively, and we have people that are making $30+ an hour, 2x, over 2x that. And so that provides a lot of opportunity for confusion when you try and report it at this summary level. If you look at the max dollars here, just below that, the max dollars would be $5,900, which would be 9%. The min dollars would be $2,800, but that's a 15% number. So what you can infer is that that's a person who, although it is a 1.0 FTE and it's not capped out, probably not working a full schedule, and as in 8 hours a day type of thing. So there's a lot in here, and so while that is accurate to say that's the average across the segment number, again, those results will vary quite a bit on an individual basis. Then we have two other pieces of classified. We have classified non-annualized and a group that I'm calling other. I'm just identifying some of the new money investment that would need to go into those groups for pay change for them as well. Basically, it all would be sourced out of the same pay schedule, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Then we have the last two segments, which we do not have pay schedules for, but I did use an objective criteria for determining what this would be. And basically, it was to relate this to what happens in the teacher segment. So to make sure that they were placed appropriately in relation to the and so the professional technical segment, where we have 15 total employees, you can see we're only investing $77,000. Again, it's only 15 employees, but that results in an average across the segment of 7.8%. In the administrators, where we have 33 employees, if we invest $180,000 in that segment, it averages 5.5%. And so that relationship that I'm speaking to is to make sure that it's appropriately placed under the teacher group by a formulaic amount. And so although there's not a pay schedule, as I said, there is a formula, and everyone's was objectively determined through that. So questions on this page before I get into some of the details of the two main pay schedules that drive this.
Are there any questions on page 14?
Does this get us closer to being competitive with our neighbors? I'm guessing I know the answer to that.
So that's a good question. I appreciate you asking that. If I go back up towards this, where we had said, hey, if we can do this $1 million, and if we can target 2.991 and look at a 9% pay change, that is more than a normal per pupil revenue rate. And so that would be more than what I am understanding base pay changes to be at other districts around the area. So it is a small opportunity for us to make a dent in that disparity. It doesn't catch us up. It doesn't make us whole, but it is something in that direction. Anything else on page 14 or anything earlier?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the way that's all derived is having a draft of a pay schedule for next year. And so what we have here on page 15 is a proposed licensed segment, teacher segment pay schedule for next year. And what this pay schedule represents is every cell going up by $3,420 from the current year pay schedule. There are elements of this pay schedule that I don't particularly love in terms of the math and kind of the way it works, but those are changes that take a lot of time. There's a lot of deep philosophical conversation that has to happen with folks like SCC members, and so I'm not attempting to introduce that through this. I'm using that structure that we have and just adjusting it in the aggregate, really taking each cell up $3,420. And so what this means, where a key benchmark that all districts have compared themselves by is what they call base pay, what your step one, level one teacher, where this year we're 38,000 and change, and next year would go up to 41,750. So that is a really good noticeable change for that particular marker. But again, every single cell is going up by that same dollar amount. What I have in here in this package as we go through page 15 and on is different statistical presentations of the schedule and either what it means in and of itself or what it means in relation to the prior year schedule. So you go to page 16, we're just looking at the schedule of itself and saying as you go vertically down steps within the lanes, these are the dollar changes between each steps. And then page 17 represents the percentage that equates to. Page 18 is the change across the lanes. So as you move into additional education credits and you go laterally across the schedule, here's what it means. You can see some of the strangeness that I don't really love in this schedule here that I'd like to be able to fix in the long term, but it's not something that we can and should be tackling at this point of the year. Then as we, and so that's page 18, page 19 is again the percentage changes of those. Then we get into, here's just a schedule of whole dollar hourly equivalents, because we also have some folks that we pay from this schedule, but they are really paid on an hourly basis if they're an INR type of role or something less than a full-time annualized staff person. This becomes a point of orientation for how they are paid on an hourly rate. So that's just in there for that point of reference. Where I want to get to is here on page 21. This is relating this schedule proposal to the current year's schedule proposal at what I call the +1 step view. So that means no one is sitting on step 1, because this relates only to current staff and as they would come. So this year's step 1 teacher would get a $3,920 raise next year as they go to step 2. And so on. So what a person can do is figure out, know where they're at currently and where their step placement would be next year by just adding 1 to their current step, and they would see what is their dollar increase according to this pay schedule going to be. Again, the smallest number of the non-capped areas is going to be something around $3,700 as we see down here, and we see lots of $4,800 and even a $5,000 number in here. So, and this is all predicated on our ability and our intention to take some of that current money and retask it into the pay schedules. Page 22 shows the percentage change of those things. So that current 1-1 teacher, if they get that, assuming they would get that $3,920 raise going into next year, that's going to result in a 10.2% increase to pay for them for next year. And so these different percentage numbers, as you see, they start to, they're different, and that represents a general strategy that I always want us to follow, and it's really built into the pay schedule itself, that for folks on the lower end of pay schedules, you want their increase to be high on a percentage basis. It'll be a little bit lower on a dollar basis than what you would see on the other end of the pay schedule, where it'll be a little bit higher in dollars but lower on percentage. So we're trying to split that middle of what would be normally two very simplistic approaches, which would be to give everyone the same dollar change. If you gave everyone the same dollar change, then veteran teachers would say, well, my improvement over the years is worth the same as folks lower on the pay schedule, and so they'd feel a little bit disenfranchised by that. If you gave everyone the same percentage change, then folks on the lower end of the schedule get a much smaller dollar increase, whereas folks on the right side get a big dollar increase. So we're trying to split the middle. We're not trying to find a place where everyone's going to be happy. We're trying to find a place where fewer people are going to be unhappy, right? So this is one of those classic scenarios where you can't make everyone happy, but I want to make everyone relatively happy, and certainly I want to make everyone as little unhappy as possible.
Can you show the slide you showed Wednesday that shows where the bulk of the licensed teachers are?
As we go to the next slide, as Mr. Schwartz has indicated we should.
You're welcome.
Page 23. This is basically the population chart of where everyone is at on the license schedule right now. This is drawn from last month's payroll. And so what we see, if we look at where people are placed on the lanes, and down at the bottom is the kind of the aggregation of that. Everyone in the BA column represents 82 people, and that represents 20% of the total staff. The total licensed staff, I should say. The other main concentration point is that MA column, where we have 102 people. It represents 25% of our staff, of our licensed staff. There's a few others that are just barely into the double digits, but a lot of them you see are single digits, so those are the 2 points of emphasis. If you look at the steps going vertically down, there's a column on the right side that shows you how those counts add up, and you can see the biggest point there is on step 10, where we have 42 people on step 10, so that represents 10% of our total licensed staff on step 10. And so what this schedule then kind of provides you is what is our our center point? What is our center point of orientation on this? And that's what this red box number is, to say it's in that MA column, step 12, where we have that point of balance where there's as many people above as there are below. There's as many people to the left as there are to the right. It's not, so in a way, it's our average. There's only 4 people there on that particular cell, but it is that point of balance. And as we want to be cognizant then of what are we doing towards the top half, what are we doing towards the bottom half, what are we doing to the left, what are we doing towards the right on this. Anything else you'd like me to mention on that, Mr. Schwartz? Okay. Sure.
I think that'll help the team bucket some of this information and where it's going to have the lion's share of the impact.
So that is the license schedule set of information that I have here. As we go towards next page, page 24, this is obnoxiously small print, which I'm well known for. I realize that. This is the classified schedule, the hourly paid schedule. And I don't think you maybe have seen it this way, or at least have it presented this way. I did create this schedule off of what we had before as a way to provide it in a manner which at least it could start to see different roles next to each other, and because that's really what a good point of a pay schedule should be, is to see how it fits across the whole segment. And so what I've done with this schedule is every single hourly rate that we have in place currently would increase by $2.24 per hour next year. That is the proposal that all this is built upon. I did make a slight disproportionate change towards the upper left part of the schedule because, as you know, Colorado minimum wage law changes. The minimum wage changes every January. And it would be best for us as a district to try and get out ahead of that change so we're not making changes mid-year like we had to do this year, where we had a change that went up to $13.65 an hour, and we had, I think, about 30-ish employees that were making less than that. So they had to get immediately elevated to that. But that's all we were able to do, was elevate those people to that minimum level, and we did not make any changes to the rest of the classified staff. So I made a little bit of a disproportionate change, again, to try and get ahead of that by getting our D38 minimum wage, if you will, up to $15 an hour is what I'm projecting for next year. And that's a little bit more than $2.24 hour increase, but hoping to get ahead of what might be next January's minimum wage change. And then that little extra bump I provided here in that 1.1 level kind of, was kind of eroded away as we moved down and to the right. And then most of these cells are just a strict last year's number plus 224. And as you can see, like I mentioned earlier, we start at that level, and then there are roles here that get into the 30s and even into the 40s a few. So it really is a useful schedule to have this related, but also showed you how some of that wide disproportionality can really affect when you aggregate this data and provide some answers that could be in some ways a little bit misleading, in best case a little bit confusing, if we refer back to that number what we mentioned above earlier, about 14% average across the segment. Because when you then start to go down and look at that same percentage change sort of data, you'll see some really good changes for a lot of roles here towards the left side of the schedule on a percentage basis. And that does go down, I won't say precipitously, but noticeably, where you get down into single digits by the time you get down into the lower right. So that same $2.24 an hour plus the step change doesn't provide the same amount of impact. It is a little bit of that style of higher percentage, lower dollars, and lower percentage with higher dollars. Just not, again, this is another schedule which I want to improve over time. And so, but to this point, I'm just working with what we have and making changes to what we have to try and maximize that potential investment that we've identified. Questions on that one?
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Upchurch.
Okay, I have several questions, and I'm going to try to articulate this as best as I can. This model that we're working with, that you're looking at, is this used in other school districts with the amount and the percent?
Yes.
Okay.
It's yes.
First of all, I have to share my personal. It disheartens me that our hourly employees that we're looking at trying to get ahead of minimum wage for individuals that are in our schools working with our children, and we're trying to get ahead of a minimum wage job that their students that they work with make. That does, again, that's very unsettling for me personally. So I have to share that. But my other questions are, when you're looking at this, is this proposal something that the board needs to approve? Okay.
The pay schedules are what you would end up approving. So it kind of is that tangible result of something you approve that affects the whole strategy.
Okay. I applaud and appreciate all this work that's gone into this with the staff collaboration committee, and I know their next meeting is coming up on April 19th. When you're going through this, what opportunities are you providing for other staff members in the district to give input and feedback in addition to the staff collaboration committee prior to the board voting?
The design of the staff collaboration committee, the big point of it is that they are the interface for their groups that they interact with. And so they are a conduit of that feedback that exists from other folks in their buildings, in their departments, should come through them and then be relayed to us, that we can either answer a question or hear additional other perspectives, other ideas, and say, okay, how much of that can be implemented and reacted to, and how much of it just needs to be explained.
And given those meetings with the staff collaboration committee, do you feel confident that you've received comprehensive feedback?
I think it's still a process that folks are getting used to, and I think it will get better over time. But I think we're at a good place, for this initial cycle of it. I think it is a good way to do that.
If I can give a quick example and speak to it in a very concrete term, where the last SCC meeting occurred last Wednesday, as early as Thursday into Friday, there were schools who were already sharing this information with their staff during lunch, during a staff meeting, whenever it may work. And those meetings are in process right now. Ideally, it's our intent that all staff have access to this type of information over the next few days. We do a little bit of additional buffer just so that everybody is getting the same thing. So we'll send this out just as an update even tomorrow using an all-staff email. And we will take feedback however it comes to us. Okay. So it's a cascading effect. To Mr. Ridgway's point, our goal is to really help continue to elevate the role of the SCC members as that conduit. So there's two-way dialogue, but we're not going to restrict it to just that. If somebody has a question about something, or they're wanting to let us know what they like or what they may not, we'll hear it. We'll have ample feedback over the next few weeks leading up to the April 17th board meeting, where that is our goal still, to have you all finalize and approve the pay schedules as drafted at that meeting.
Okay, that answers one question.
Dr. Summers, is there a reason why we have to wait that long? Couldn't we put it on the agenda for our next work session meeting, time permitting?
Well, I'm trying to maybe infer what I'm hearing in your question, Mr. Clausen. Are you suggesting we do this sooner?
Well, I understand that potentially our next work session meeting could be busy for us, but if time is available, I wouldn't mind seeing if we could knock out this issue sooner versus later.
So, Matt, Brett has a response for you.
I agree, and that I would like to do that, But we're already cart ahead of the horse here because we're doing this without having final numbers from the state in terms of what the School Finance Act number will be. And in the past, we were able to do that because that School Finance Act data came to us at a much earlier sequence. And so while on one hand, I would like to say, yes, we can and we should do that. On the other hand, I would say, I really think we need to make sure we get further down the road with the state level so that we know that that 8% PPR number that all of this is being based upon really comes to play and doesn't end up being 7%, even 7.5%, right? Some small change to this will have a ripple effect if it doesn't play.
What are the dates on that, in your opinion? I'm sorry, in your experience?
My experience now, it's been well into May. I know they're trying to be better about it and get it backed up into April. And so I think we're already kind of as aggressive as we can be based on what we've done in recent annual cycles of trying to do this in April. And putting this out there and with the explanation that this is our full intentionality if this is the starting point. If that starting point changes, then it will have some change.
So with the letter, sorry.
Hold on just one second. Mr. Clausen, did you want to respond?
No, that makes perfect sense to me. I concur. It does not make sense to put the cart in front of the horse.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Upchurch.
Well, I was going to ask about that. So the letter going out this week, tomorrow, you said, that letter isn't this is what we're doing. That is a letter saying, this is our thoughts of what we think we're going to do, but it's not solidified yet.
It's our proposed and draft compensation strategy overview. So, and it's already out there. So it's just sugar on top at this point to say we presented it to you all this evening, and we just want to make sure all our staff have, again, the most up-to-date and accurate information as a result.
Well, the reason I'm asking, I'm sorry, but the reason I'm asking is I just want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of when we're looking at this from our the teachers and the staff that are on the far left versus the ones that are on the far right. That finding that balance is so tough to find the balance of compensating, recognizing, acknowledging, and rewarding our teachers on both sides of the spectrum. And I think of like our teachers that have been around a while, who've been around 10 years, 15 years, who've gone through COVID, 2 frozen periods, have been there time and time again and making sure we're rewarding them. And so I look at on that letter, I look at the reward thing that says they'll get $250 bonus a year per experience. Well, if you've got 5 years experience, that's $50 a year.
Actually, we haven't really had a chance to go through that yet
Okay.
with you, so.
We're way too far ahead on that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And I think it will be important for you to see this in its entirety. So you've gotten to the point where you have the actual pay schedules
Okay,
for both teachers and classified.
Fair. My apologies.
So let's move forward, Mr. Ridgway. I think.
But I think one little thing I'd like to say is that what I want to be able to say is that this is the process, this is the structure that we have built, and the final change to inputs is the only thing that would change. Not this process, not this intention of how we have gotten to this point, just that final recalculation of the math of this entire process. So yeah, let's go to point number 2 of those 5 points of strategy and talk about the anniversary payment program.
And we're on page 28.
We are on page 28. And so it may or may not surprise you that over 50% of our staff has been with D38 less than 5 years. And 49% of it have been here 5 years or longer. And so to implement a longevity loyalty award program, what we have designed is something that would happen at every 5X anniversary going forward. So when you hit your 5th year, when you hit your 10th year, when you hit your 15th year, there will be a payment, a one-time payment to the employee according to this table that is presented here for whatever that year of payment was. This table is built, it starts at $250 for the 5-year payment. and then it escalates by $250 for every 5 years. Okay, and so the 5-year person would get $250. That when you hit 10 years, it'll be a $500 payment. So the longer you stay, and this is based on anniversary dates, not based on steps on their schedule. Okay, so it's related but different, right? How long have you been with the district? One of the things that I want to do, and I'm suggesting and believe that we can do in terms of kicking off this program, is recognize all 408 people that have been here 5 years or longer with what their most recent 5X anniversary payment would have been. It may be this year that they hit 10 years, but they may have hit 10 years last year. Whichever the case is, we want them to get a 10-year payment this year.
So what happens if they are at 9 years this year and hit 10 years next year? Would they get 2 payments?
They would get a 5-year payment this year, and then next year they'd get the 10-year payment.
Okay.
And by the way, good question.
Mm-hmm.
We exercise through this in graphical, explanatory detail with the entire SEC team. And I was watching the body language, and they seemed to absorb it quite thoroughly.
So the distribution of our 408 employees is what's shown under this 23 count here. So we'd be paying 180 people that 5-year amount. And again, they may have been here, as you said, 9 years to date. This year might be their 9th, it might be their 8th, it might be their 7th, it might be their 6th, it might even be their 5th, right? They would all be getting that 5th. And then going forward, we'd wait until their next 5X. If they're lucky enough that it's next year, great. If they're hitting 10 years this year, then their next one will be in 5 years. Again, we can't make everything perfect and everyone perfectly happy, but we can get it. We can get really to a good place, which is 0, right? We haven't done this before. And so establishing this as a program and something that can be counted on and looked towards going forward would be important. This current year's, this way of starting it this year for those full 408 would cost $267,000. We talked earlier in the prior item about the extrapolated variance potential, right? Here's a prime use of what that could be applied towards. As we go into the out years, you'll see this affecting fewer folks and costing less, but it will normalize out to something around $100,000 a year going forward, assuming that more people stay with us and maybe our average tenure goes above that 5-year mark. So, yeah, a new program, and had a lot of I would say support, almost basically unanimous support on this from the SCC.
And it came directly from feedback. That was the top ranking item that we heard from the survey that was administered when we sent that out.
So putting a couple of these things together, your 20-year tenured person will receive that change in the pay schedule going into next year, and they would receive $1,000 one-time payment as well.
And Brett, remind me again, I think we were talking about doing that as early as...
The timing, yeah, we did talk about it with the SEC. The SEC, referring back to that winter payment that we just did here in January, they really believed that the way we handled that as a separate payment, not part of regular payroll, was really well received and valued by the staff, and so they would like to see this as a separate payment as well. So we'd be looking at something probably either those very last few days of May or very first few days of June. So right after Memorial Day, comes as soon after the May 27th payroll as we can, basically.
But just to clarify, this would not just be this year.
No, just this initial column would be this year, and then every year at that same timing, as people are hitting those anniversary marks, they would have that payment coming.
Yeah, thank you.
So can I?
Yeah.
I apologize for not understanding. So when we're looking at that count, say, let's just take the 10-year 500 amount. Would that 10-year person get that same longevity payment at year 11 also, or is it only on their anniversary?
It's only on their 5X anniversary.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe round
Go
out
ahead.
the route.
Okay. We're getting towards the end here, page 29 of 32. So number three strategy was that we were going to keep it slightly dial back on the new hire and hard to fill placement incentives. So this program that we started last year for new hire positions and also hard to fill positions. The only real change to that is to dial back that new hire teacher amount, where this year it was a $2,500 one-time payment, and dial it back to $2,000 payment. Also, we want to adjust that from a single payment to a a split payment. This year we did single payments that happened in September for the most part. Classified staff, which had a $1,000 opportunity this year, was already established to be in two payments, which were one initial and then one after 6 months. And so we'd want to have a similar pattern for all the new hire teacher as well.
Yeah, that I get it.
The rest of it's unchanged. The health savings account is really not a cost savings option as much as it is a good attraction option to make sure that we have good, current, modern offerings for our health programs. And not having an HSA program is kind of a glaring omission that we didn't have that in terms of our portfolio of offerings. So adding that will be a good opportunity for folks to be able to take that path. And number 5 is, again, something that I alluded to earlier in terms of our what we wanted to do with a particular policy in terms of how we place folks on the pay schedule when they are initially hired. Right now, that number is 9. We want to extend it, but we're doing some cost analysis on this of how far we can extend it if we are to also make that a backdated adjustment to folks that have been hired in recent years, which is a good and worthy endeavor, but that will have a fairly significant cost component to it, and so that's what will kind of dictate how fast we can go on this path towards 15. I put on this slide 15 likely. Actually, some of the data I was looking at today, I'm not as confident that 15 is likely. I'm not ready to write it off yet, but it's certainly not going to, we certainly can't go straight to 20 and backdate everyone that had lost years of experience, if you will. So that one is still some work to be done, and hopefully we get that answer here in April. So, this is one slide that I thought was important to share, is just, again, to relate all of this work back to the feedback we received from the survey and the work we've done with the SCC. So of these 10 priority points, we have clearly hit 4 out of the 10. One of those 10 subsequently was determined to be invalid and already completed, that whole restoring past frozen steps. That had already been done. So there was really just a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication that drove that item even being here on the list. So of the remaining 9, were 4 out of those 9. And as Amber talked about earlier, when you talk about calendars, there's additional work that we want to do and can do, especially as it relates to number 6 there, to see if something can be pursued in that way. I've mentioned today about how I do want to work on the pay schedules. It's just not the right time of the year. We need to do that as a fall exercise, not something here in the spring when we're trying to really get those schedules proposed for use. So that one's definitely on the calendar of things, a list of priorities that we want to do here. And then look at these other items and see, okay, what is the best way? Can we do anything in regard to those as we continue to work on this going forward? So this isn't saying, hey, we did 4 out of 10 and we're done. We've done 4 out of 10 so far, and we're going to continue to pursue other items.
So can I start off? I want to say thank you for there's a lot of information to digest, and I appreciate all this crunching and looking for any penny we can find to pinch to get there. And I appreciate and applaud the staff collaboration committee that has been working on this as well. Again, it makes me sad that our paraprofessionals, that we're just trying to get them to a minimum, we're looking at minimum wage for a paraprofessional, and that's hard for me to swallow. I also understand that when your funding and resources are short, you're doing what you can with what you can. It makes me sad that for the longevity amounts that they can't be more. I understand where we are, why we are there. But the work that has gone into this to make some strides and improvements, I appreciate and applaud.
Thank you. And as that anniversary program, it's a good place for us to start. Maybe it could get better in the future, and I'd rather be able to go that direction than have to dial it back in the future if we started too aggressively on it. So, because we did talk about other options with that, but we said, no, this is the right place for us to start.
And I also appreciate, I wanted to call out extending the experience credit granted to hire. I know that's something that a lot of our competitors are doing. And so trying to get there or find ways to get there, and that's not an easy task also, and I appreciate that. And then finally, I do appreciate that you mentioned that there's some things you still want to work on to improve and fix, but making sure that the timing is correct. I appreciate that you have that drive to make sure that we're addressing that, so thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
Thank you to all the team.
And let me say, in terms of that extending the experience credit, yes, we are behind other districts on that. In my prior role, we had gone to 20 last year. But as we had extended that from 10 to 15 to 20 there at D49, we did not backdate pre-hired staff. That allowed us to move quicker on that because the cost was only about that new hired staff.
Sure.
So there's pros and cons to that, obviously. It allowed us, when I was there, allowed them, I should say now, to more aggressively be able to pursue and attract those new hire candidates, but it did not take it did not take an inward look as to where's our current staff. So that's a different approach, and I think it has a deeper effect here. I think there are more staff here that have been limited in the past hiring than what I saw in that environment over there, and so it is a different mix.
Good to know.
Mr. Clausen, anything else to add?
Nope, I just concur with the statements that have already been made. Well done to the committee, and I think this is a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Ridgway.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I think that closes out that agenda item. We really appreciate all your efforts. I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any comments or concerns? Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz? Aye. Ms. Upchurch?
Aye. This hurts my heart.
The board will now convene in executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation, a personnel matter in accordance with CRS 24-6-402. Following the executive session, there will be no further business conducted and the meeting will be adjourned.